That's crazy. It's so much easier to talk about people than talk to people. Have you had your daily drip? Welcome back to season 3 of the Daily Drip podcast, where we create kingdom content that builds community. I'm your host, Aaron Levy, and we gonna squeeze them scripts for that daily drip. You know, I really liked last week how we read the verses from the devotional. And if you're new to this podcast, we also have a devotional, John, 21 daily drips of dialogue, where I take the reoccurring word of each chapter. I make that the drip. Those are the devotional verses. We talk about it for insight, and then we practice it. So we may practice it together with a discussion question that is in the Devo. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the verses where the word muttering is here. Now, remember last week, Jesus does this huge miracle. Our drip was bread, and then it tests and actually divides the crowd because so many disciples leave, so many Pharisees are offended, and now people are muttering about Jesus. So let's go ahead and look at the drip. We're going to be in John chapter 7, and then we're just going to start first from verse 11 through 13. Let's lock in. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, "Where is he?" And there was much muttering about him among the people, while some said, "He is a good man." Others said, "No, he's leading the people astray." Yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him. John chapter 7, verse 32 through 36. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and the Pharisees sent officers to arrest him. Jesus said, "I will be with you a little longer, and then I'm going to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come." The Jews said to one another, "Where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion amongst the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by what he says, 'You will seek me, and you will not find me, and where I come, you cannot come'?" John 7, 40 through 41. When they had heard these words, some of the people said, "This is really the prophet." Others said, "This is the Christ." But some said, "Is the Christ to come from Galilee?" This is good right here. Now, I want you to notice something, because I do this sometimes in the devotional. Not only do I make the word that's the drip capitalized, but there are some times where there's some reoccurring things that are clues. So if we look at John chapter 7, verse 11 through 13, look what every time it says they're muttering about him. And then verse 32 and 36, they're muttering about him. So they're not talking to him, they're talking about him. What is that? That's called gossip. So I wrote in the devotional here, our faith is tested when we have unanswered questions. Muttering happens when we fill in the blanks of what we don't understand. Isn't that true? And see, when you're following Jesus and making him your Lord is following with questions. That's the faith journey. Once all your questions are answered, you don't need faith. And the reason why they're muttering is because they're limited to their own understanding. And there's division amongst the people on who Jesus really is. Remember, they're saying, "He's a good man." No, he's leading the people astray. But look, yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him. That's crazy. It's so much easier to talk about people than talk to people. And that's why this devotional is, in the back I say, hey, are you looking to get better at hard conversations? Because we live in a day and age where people aren't having conversations. We would rather comment on somebody than have a conversation in person. There's something about looking at somebody's eyeballs and sharing things with them. It's so much easier to share things about them. Look at here. People are saying, "This is the Christ." Some say, "He's really a prophet." Is the Christ really from Galilee? So people are trying to limit their things to their understanding. It reminds me of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him. He'll direct your path." Again, the faith journey is Jesus directing our path when we don't lean on our own understanding. But the smarter we get, the more it's so tempting to lean on our own understanding. So I put here, what is muttering? It means to have secret displeasure, to complain about something or someone instead of asking questions or learning about what we may not understand. And I think that's what makes the faith journey complex, because the faith journey is more about unlearning than learning. And we're raised to go to school, get an education, and then once you have an education, now you're quote unquote qualified to be in that trade or to be in that career. And then once you get in that career, once you're quote unquote qualified by your skills, your resume, your expertise, then you can climb up the corporate ladder. The faith journey is the opposite. The faith journey is like going to unlearning university. Everything that you thought you were good at, you're not good at. Everything that you thought you had figured out, you don't have figured out. And that's why Christianity can make us spiritually dizzy sometimes, because it's kind of hard to find our footing, but we don't have to find our footing when we're in the Lord's hands. And that's the thing about the faith journey. The easiest thing to happen when we don't understand something is to mutter. And that's what we see that's happening. Jesus was going from person to person, one-on-one, having these interactions. John chapter 4, woman at the well. John chapter 5, the man that needed healing. John chapter 6, him testing the disciples in private. Then the crowd of people that are saying, oh my God, Jesus is a great chef. We have bread, we have fish, right? And now all this muttering is happening. Has this happened in your life before, where you've determined some level of success and people start muttering about you? Well, the first thing I will share as what we're going to practice this week is the more that you grow in leadership, the more you will be misunderstood. If Jesus was misunderstood, why are we wasting our time trying to be understood by people? Now, we want to be considerate on who we take advice from. We don't want to cut everybody off. So the people that we would celebrate with, the people that we would cry with, those are our safe circle. Those are the people that we lean in with. But the people on social media that we don't know that may mutter about your success or about your failures, why are we wasting our time really giving that value? If Jesus didn't, we don't have to as well. Now remember, DRIP, drip, devotional, reading for insight and practice. So what happens is we've talked about it. I try to break down the verses as best as I can. And then there's 4 discussion questions. We're not going to do 4 discussion questions, but how about we do one for practice this week? Let's go to question number 2. What are some ways social media has influenced us to share opinions without seeking deeper understanding? How can we resist this tendency? I'll also add to that, man, like ChatGPT, for one, it's a game changer. For one, it's incredible. It's not the devil. It's not the enemy, right? It's a great assistant. It's great low-hanging fruit to grab information. But we can't grab information about people online and think that we know them. Because the only information that's surfacing online, a lot of times could be misinformation. But most of the time, it's not an autobiography. It's not that person. And if you think about your life, there are people that know sections or chapters of your life, pages of your life, but there's not people that know your entire book. Jesus is the only one that knows your entire book of your life from beginning to end. And that's why it's so advantageous that we trust him with our life, because he's the only one that loves us as is, knowing our whole story. There's some people that know impressive chapters and they love us. There's certain people that know dark chapters of our life and they hate us. Jesus knows it all and he chooses to give us grace. So let's practice that this week. Not allowing social media to be the definition of life, the definition of how we describe others. Let's not let news articles be intake of wisdom. That's not what it is. That is some information, but we always know in truth. Every single day that we do the devotional, we also have a have the conversation section. So there's some discussion questions that we can ask, but we have a have the conversation with someone, and we have that conversation with Jesus. Let me see what we wrote here. Here's a conversation that we can have with Jesus this week. With Jesus, bring your unanswered questions or frustrations to him in prayer. Ask him to help you trust his plan, even when you don't fully understand it. That's how we're going to practice it. Instead of going to social media first, instead of going to our spouse first, our boss, our grandkids, our grandparents, first, let's go to Jesus on things we don't understand, because we're not going to lean on our own understanding. So if we're not going to lean on our own understanding, why would we lean on the understanding of somebody else prior to getting understanding from Jesus? Hey, thank you for staying to the end of the podcast. Hey, this book is available on Amazon, and it'll also be in the show notes. Stay dripping, my friends.